Stephen Espinoza. What's good, man?
I'm good, man. I'm excited.
It's fight week. How you feeling about the event?
This is great. Among other things, it's a big tank fight. It's going to be a record-breaking night, with the biggest Barclays gate they've ever done for a boxing event. But, all right, Ryan, you can see excuse me. But, among other things, it's the first pay-per-view event in Barclays. And a lot of the pay-per-view events end up in Vegas. I think it's great that we get these big pay-per-view events occasionally outside of Vegas. Here in New York City, we've done Atlanta with Tank, we did LA with Tank. I think, exposing fans to like the big time, the top of the top in terms of the matchups, it's a great thing from the sport. And I'm not surprised at all that the Brooklyn audience and the Tri-City audience has responded, with great enthusiasm for this event.
First, I want to say, dude, y'all have been on fire. This since when did you put out the schedule? February?
Early March.
Early March.
Yeah.
I mean, every week seems like it's an A-level fight, exciting fight. So I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
With Gervonta Davis, him being a pay-per-view fighter, what is considered a success now that this is the era of streaming, stealing fights?
Yeah, look, the reality is, Tank does really healthy gates. I mean, he does $4 or $5 million gates, and he can do that outside his hometown, which puts him in a category with very few. It's just a handful of other boxers. And I bring that up because, you combine that with pay-per-view revenues, and even if you look at, say, at the lower end, 2 or 250,000 buys, that still adds up to revenue, in the 15, 20 plus $20 million area. So the reality, we've all become sort of spoiled, and we're coming off the era of Floyd Mayweather and doing 1 million buys here and there. But look, it's very lucrative at the lower levels. 200,000 buys is still $12, $13 million in revenue. If you're doing 300,000 buys, you're well over $20 million. So I think if you're looking from the fighter perspective, I mean, anytime you can generate that kind of revenue, that's a success.
What can the casual fan expect Saturday night? 2 really big punches, New York City bright lights.
Well, before we get there, I think there's there's always a danger when you have like a big star with Tank at the top of the card that people don't pay enough attention. For me, I'm also excited about 2 of the young guys on the undercard. Eduardo Ramirez in the opening fight, he's a super featherweight, one of the best in the world, and Jesus Ramos, who is a power puncher. Both of those guys are action fighters. So part of this is, we've got a little bit of a formula, which is, on all these cards, we've got a great fight at the top. We've got a meaningful second fight, usually a guy trying to position himself for a title. And we've been using our opening fights with young guys, like this past weekend with Benavidez, with Fierro and Nunez, 2 undefeated guys, young guys. Turned out to be a really exciting all-action fight. And that's why I think what the early part of this pay-per-view will be. And then, the main event, Tank, I think part of the reason for Tank's success is in his popularity is that he's a showman. He enjoys putting on a show in terms of the event and in terms of his walkout and the way he fights in the ring. So when you combine that, you combine all the intensity and the emotion of the rivalry, and you've got 2 knockout punchers, I think it's a recipe for a really exciting night.